Keyframes are the absolute foundation of animation for creating movement or change over time. What you're essentially doing is saying that at this point in time, down to the exact frame that corresponds to the time code, I want each parameter to be a certain value. And now you should immediately be able to see that the possibilities are endless. Let's animate what we built here with this text layer. Say that we want it to rise up and fade in. Very simple. Well, the way that makes most sense for me to animate is I do it in reverse, meaning that I build everything the way that it's going to end up, and then I move to the start of the composition or the start of the movement, and then animate the text out of frame. This way I can make sure that the end frame looks good, and I'm guaranteed that everything will end up that way. It's kind of counterintuitive, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's say we're happy with this frame. First, hit the drop-down arrow here to bring up our transformations. I'll have a whole section on keyboard shortcuts, which can bring each of them up individually, but I think it's good for you to visually see all the transformations next to each other here for now. So let's say that we want this movement to be a second long. So let's move to 1 second on the timeline, which is indicated by the time code and the lines right here. And then hit the stopwatch next to position and opacity. Again, our goal is for the text to rise up and fade in at the same time. So position and opacity are the two parameters that deal with those. Then let's move backwards in time to 0 seconds, or 1 second before. Now let's adjust the position parameter so that the text shifts downward. You could also drag the actual layer, but it's hard to keep it perfectly straight. So by shifting the numbers in either direction, you can guarantee that it will be aligned properly. You'll see that by doing that, it created another keyframe and it now saves those values in it. Then on the same keyframe, we can reduce the opacity down to 0. And we want to make sure that we're on the same keyframe, which will be indicated by the keyframe icon over here on the left being blue instead of gray. And now when we play this back, you can see that it moves from point A to B over time. And you can adjust the speed by changing the distance between them. So for example, moving the keyframes closer together means that it will take less time to get from the start to the end. So therefore, the animation will appear faster. And likewise, if we move them farther apart, then it will take longer and the animation will appear slower. So practice doing basic animations with keyframes. Move the points around and get a feel for how they work and adjust the speed a little bit. Let's say that instead of rising up, we wanted to zoom forward. So let's delete the position keyframes and instead go to the endpoint. So the keyframe on the left here is blue, indicating that we are on that exact keyframe, because if we're one frame in either direction, we're not going to be on the keyframe, and they all align up with the playhead. So you want to make sure that the opacity on the bottom and the position on the top line up identically. So once we're sure about that, then we can click the scale stopwatch, and this will create a keyframe for scale. And it's at 100 right now, as you can see, but we can go back to the start and then enter 0. Then now it will grow and fade in. And we can also add rotation. So add a rotation keyframe at the endpoint so that it's level, and then move to the start and offset it a little bit. And now you can see the power of adjusting multiple transformations simultaneously. And of course, you can take this to a massive scale, pun intended.